Hello and welcome. I'm really quite excited to show you a new cart stacking design. I saw it in a video on a CartMIS I item sorter by Rapscallion with help from Inspector Talon, and it's quite a simple design, but it really means that we can do some things in cart logistics, and for those watching my videos, that's, making minecarts break the boundaries of where chunk loading is, that we couldn't really do before. So the nicest thing about this minecart stacker is how simple it is. All it does is use the fact that when minecarts, and I'll just grab some to show you, come onto this sloped rail, they sort of stack on top of each other without going vertical. This means this minecart stacker can be very, very small. It also means we get a signal out so we can detect when something's running, so we don't have to run a clock all the time. And because this trapdoor is what makes it so that only one minecart comes along, we can be a little bit loose with the signal here. Doesn't matter if the cart pushes along too much. Doesn't even matter if we get two observer signals. Like we could have two pulses here while that trapdoor's down. It'll still only send one cart across. So it's really quite simple, easy to build, and very helpful. But as I said before, it's not just, how simple it is. It's what it lets us do that we couldn't do before in minecart logistics. So this is a slightly different version. This is called, this is basically a minecart throttler. So we basically have an input and it's coming in fast. And this basically makes sure that, the minecarts are automatically released one by one, but they're only released, at a certain pace. It's quite simple in how it does this. When there's a minecart waiting there, it releases this fader clock. And every time this fader clock gets down to 0, it pushes the piston out. And then resets itself. What's nice about this is we can also hold the fader clock with a external signal. So if I put some minecarts in here, we can see that, the fader clock's not going down because the signal's held. Maybe some other system over here is not ready yet. But once that other system is ready, it can release the line and the minecarts start coming out again. Now, this is particularly important as it comes down to nether portals, because with the nether portal, if a minecart's only just come through another portal very recently, it needs to be held for a certain amount of time, like this is now doing, before it's sent through the portal. But we also want to have a way of telling that it's being held so that we can release our chunk loader. So in this design, there's a chunk loader here. It's normally off, except if a minecart is waiting there, in which case the chunk loader will load and keep this portal loaded. So we can see two minecarts come in. First one is held long enough so that it can go back through the nether portal, and while it's held, this signal here is released, which will allow that chunk loader to run. So now that we've seen what a cart stacker is and how simple it is, let's show something very complicated that we can do with it. Let's send some minecarts across to unloaded chunks, get 3 different types of items, and bring them back. So since this takes a while, I'm just going to put 6 minecart hoppers here, and send them on their way, and we'll talk about what's going on through the nether a little bit later. They're going to go through the nether, and they're going to get their items, and they're going to come back. They're going to come up this tower of rails into another one of these minecart stackers, and this is a way of this sorting machine just indicating that, hey, I'm too busy to take more items, just wait a little bit. They're going to come out of there over these rails and match one of these hoppers, so regular rails or powered rails or activator rails, and if they match that hopper, then the item gets taken out, minecart gets pushed over the appropriate rail, and then put back into the minecart before going into a minecart yeeter. The empty minecarts will come there, and the items will come here. So pretty basic. The only other thing is we're using lecterns here to be able to redirect the signal without having it go into a solid block. And we can see our first minecarts come in. So it's going to come over, it matches the first item, comes over, and as we can see, that hopper filled up, and it's more than 2/3 full at the moment. Being more than 2/3 full, powers this block to more than 2/3, which means this signal is more than 2/3, which means it's more than this furnace is carrying, which means that's now holding our minecart stacker. So we know that these minecarts will just pile up here, waiting until we know that for whatever item it's coming through, all of these hoppers are less than 2/3 full and can all take a full stack of items without leading them there to despawn. Pretty straightforward as a sorting machine. I think we're getting another minecart through now, and that has gone into the third slice, I believe. Yep, third slice. So as we can see, if we come down here, you can see that we've already gotten 3 of our minecarts back. We're getting our regular rail, our powered rail, and our activator rail. And we already have our 3 remaining minecarts here waiting to go into the system. So that's one of the things the minecart stack lets us do. It lets us basically keep minecarts until later components are ready for it. If we go through the nether, you can see that the minecarts come in along the right. As they come along, they hit these detector rails, which is basically set up just to release these chunk loaders, just to keep the minecart chunks loaded as they come over here. So normally these would not be loaded because there's no player here, but they're loaded as the minecart comes through. Eventually, till it gets to this point, we have another stacker. This stacker, instead of being held by an outside signal, holds an outside signal. So they come here, and this fader clock essentially means, wait that long before you go through, just in case you haven't been in the nether long enough. And if more minecarts come up behind it, it just piles up and waits. But while it's waiting, that redstone signal gets released, which means this chunk loader gets to run, keeping items moving back and forwards between this portal to keep both this chunk loaded and the chunk on the other side. You can see here we've got yet another minecart stacker, and this is because we've got like a loading machine over here. Now you remember I sent through 6 carts earlier, but we've only got 3 stations. So the first 3 carts come through just fine, 1, 2, 3, but once all 3 stations are full, this line turns off, turning that line on, holding the clock, so that the next 3 minecarts come here and they wait. I'm not going to explain the loading station here, it's just a loading station. And there's some circuitry here to just run another chunk loader on the other side, just to keep this chunk loaded while the loading station loads the minecarts. So, thank you for watching. As we've seen, this quite simple design for a minecart stacker really lets us do some things with minecart logistics we really couldn't do before. So much thanks to Rapscallion and Inspector Talon for both creating the minecart stacker and showing it off in their CartMIS I item sorter, and thank you for watching.